Welcome. Tonight we have as our guest the Honorable Joe Wright, a candidate for Congress in this 2nd District. He is a former state senator, former majority leader of the state Senate, and a farmer. Mr. Wright, give us your background, educational, professional, and otherwise.
Well, that won't take as long as you think, because I've been practicing on this all year, and so I can, in about 15 seconds, tell you my life story. I happen to live in the same home I was born in, at Harney, Kentucky, there in Breckinridge County, and so I've been there on that spot of ground all my 56 years. Did graduate from the University of Kentucky in 1962, and immediately after that joined the Marine Corps and did active duty and in the reserve, served for 6 years in the United States Marine Corps. My wife Barbara, who is from Hodgenville, Kentucky, and I married in Hodgenville in LaRue County there in 1964. And to that union have come 4 children. We have been very blessed. They've all been healthy, and we've been very fortunate in that regard. And we have 3 daughters and a son. 2 of our daughters live in Tennessee, one in Nashville, one in Franklin. The one in Franklin has our only 2 grandchildren. And then our son is a senior at the University of Kentucky. And our 3rd daughter is a teacher in the Meade County school system. I have always believed in public service, and as a result of that have from time to time offered myself for public service in various capacities. The first public office I held was as a school board member in Breckinridge County, and after that term was completed, I then spent the next year serving or running for state senator in the 5th Senatorial District in Kentucky, and that included the counties of Meade, Breckinridge, Ohio, Grayson, Hart, and a part of Hardin County. So that was the counties that were in that district. And I was honored then to be reelected and to serve for 17 years straight. And 11 of those years I was majority leader of the Kentucky State Senate, which is longer than anyone in the history of the Kentucky State Senate. After I left the State Senate, I left, quite frankly, because I felt that I had lost the competitive edge, and it was no longer the challenge that it had once been. And quite frankly, I have always considered myself to be a farmer, and I wanted to come home and farm for a few years when I really felt like it and physically felt like farming, and had no plans whatsoever of ever making another political race. But after I had come home and was farming, I was elected to serve on the Burley Tobacco Co-op as president of that co-op board, and of course had the responsibility 2 years ago as president of the co-op to lead the effort to sell that huge surplus of tobacco that we had built up, so that we would not take that 40% cut that had been that was going to result from that huge surplus. So that was a very important effort. As a result of that, quite frankly, it was the first time in the history of the Burley business that the farmers, the growers, and the companies had come together and solved their problems without having the Congress involved in it.
What size farm do you have?
We farm 2,600 acres there in Breckinridge County. It's not river bottom land. It's land that's not unlike what a lot of the land right here in Barron County is like, quite frankly. Probably about 2/3 of that land is usable in one form or another. But other than that, most of the land is really just hills and hollers and that sort of thing, which you have some in this area, of course, as well. So probably 1,800 acres of it is land that is usable, and about 2/3 of that, say 1,200 acres, is in corn, wheat, soybeans, and tobacco, and the rest of it then would be in pasture and hay and so forth. So that's about the size of the farm.
So essentially you consider yourself a farmer.
I always have. That's right. My father was a farmer, and his father was a farmer, and so it's kind of in our blood, I guess. And I love farming. It's a challenge in itself, but it also is it's a great way of life, and as well as a great place to raise a family, and a great way to learn what work is about and what the work ethic is about. And I think what the way of life and what brought America to be what it is all about, quite frankly.
Of course, one of the issues in the campaign concerns tobacco. The President has recommended that it come under the jurisdiction of the Federal Drug Act. I understand you are opposed to that.
Right. The President is wrong on the issue of regulating tobacco by the FDA.
Why?
Well, first of all, I do not consider tobacco to be a drug. Some people do, but I don't. And it's a legal product in this country. And I believe that government's responsibility ends in the case of the young adults, or the youngsters in this country, teenagers. It ends at the point that we have limited access to the extent that it makes sense and is practical, and to the extent that we spend resources in educating young people to the effects that are caused by the use of tobacco, whether it's smoking or chewing tobacco or snuff or whatever. And I think after that, government's done about all it should do, and I don't think that we need the FDA regulating tobacco and getting into the business of really limiting what adults can do, because I think that's eventually what will happen, quite frankly.
Do you think that whatever regulation that may be necessary as far as youths are concerned, should that come from the federal government, or should it be a matter for the states to regulate, in your judgment?
Well, the final regulation needs to come from the states. That is the place that this should be regulated. I think it's appropriate for the federal government to establish some broad guidelines so that the regulation from the states will, throughout this country, be generally equal and even-handed. And that's the way that I view this issue, and think that it should be done in that way.
Insofar as you know, how do you differ with your opponent, Mr. Lewis, in this regard?
Well, I differ to the extent that he has done very little, or very little, if anything, on this subject other than talk about it. In fact, he was quoted in the New York Times as being delighted over this issue. And of course he's delighted because he believes and perceives that he will be helped politically in some way because of the President's action and because he's in a different party than what the President is. So my position is on this issue, as it would be on other issues, that a United States Congressman has a responsibility to try to solve problems and not just ignore problems, or not try to gain in some way politically from these problems. And so I would be different in that I would be out front, I would be proactive in trying to find a solution to this problem, a legislative solution to the problem, rather than to stand on some hill somewhere and talk about how great I was and not solve the problem, which is what our present Congressman has done.
Another issue, and it's making the rounds in the papers and in the political ads, and is somewhat confusing, and that's the Medicare issue. What do you know about the Medicare issues, and what are your stands?
Well, first of all, I have tried not to make it a huge issue. Now, we are dealing with it in one of our TV ads in this campaign. My position is that obviously anybody who's paying attention knows that Medicare has a problem and it needs to be fixed. And the way to fix it is to recognize that it's a problem for this nation and for Republicans and Democrats to come together and do the right thing for America. Now, what we have going on in Washington right now is the blame game, and one side trying to fix it, and the other side raising the issue that they're trying to make these huge cuts in order to give these tax breaks to some of the richest people in this country. It may be, in the end, that part of what we have to do might be close to what is being proposed by the Republicans. But it doesn't make sense to make these huge cuts and at the same time give these huge tax breaks to these rich people. And they're doing it in the same legislation, and that's the reason that they've gotten caught in the act and the reason it is an issue. And I think it's a legitimate issue, and rightfully so. And even if you take off the table the idea and the notion that the Republicans are putting forth, that, well, we didn't cut it, all we did is cut back on what the expected growth would be, that still does not address the fact that senior citizens were going to have their monthly premiums more than double over the next 6 to 7 years, and the co-pays that they were going to have to put out to providers was going to be increased too. So in effect, it was a tax increase on the senior citizens of this country. So they were getting caught both ways.
Speaking of ads, and I've wondered about this, and I'm going to not only going to ask you this, I'm going to ask Mr. Lewis tomorrow night. Who does your ads, and do you approve them before they're ever shown?
Our ads were put together by a firm in Nashville, Tennessee. And we had hands-on input into those ads. We saw them before they were finalized. My wife viewed them, I viewed them. Every member of my family has viewed those ads to make certain that they were ads that we thought were appropriate and we thought reflected what we would like to have reflected in this campaign. And so to answer your question, absolutely, we did approve every one of those ads, and I'm proud of those ads and believe that they do a good job of pointing out what we'd like to have pointed out as far as differences between my opponent and I in this campaign.
Were they done in collaboration with either the state Democratic organization or the national organization?
In no way. Never. Those ads were put together right there. All the filming was done on my farm or in my local community right there. And then the firm in Tennessee then finalized, used the film then, and of course we put together the message that we wanted to put with the film. So the National Party or any person in the National Party at no time ever viewed those films until every person in the 2nd Congressional District had the same opportunity to view them.
We talked about Medicare. What about Social Security? There are certain indications that it's going to have to be refinanced a few years down the road.
Well, and that is true, and it's because of this baby boom generation, of which I'm a member of that group that's coming along here in a few years. And it will have to be addressed, and we need to recognize that. It is not of the same, does not have the same immediacy that we have as far as the Medicare problem is concerned. Obviously, the Medicare problem is a situation that we're faced here in the next 5 to 6 years, and we've got to address it very quickly, and as I've already said, in a bipartisan way, and do the right thing for America. And Social Security will have to be dealt with in that very same way when the time comes. Of course, when you project out on Social Security 20 or 30 years down the road, times and circumstances, economic conditions, all of those things impact on that. And so I think it would be premature to try to come forward with any thoughts about solving a problem that is only yet perceived and not real, but eventually it may very well be real, and we'll have to address it at the time. I guess, you know, what I would like everyone to know and understand, I've tried to say it, I hope I've articulated it well, is that on these major problems that we face as a nation, we just simply cannot continue to play this blame game of one party against the other. That people in the United States Congress are going to recognize that this is an American problem. We've got to do the right thing for America. We've got to quit spending so much time worrying about who gets credit or who gets blame, and just simply solve the problem so that it's fair and compassionate to the mass of the people. And that's what I'd be about as a United States Congressman.
What about the COLAs? Do you favor continuing them, or do they need adjusting? And some people will wonder, when we start talking about COLA, we're talking about cost of living adjustments, yearly cost of living adjustments.
Well,
and they're based on inflation.
That's right.
Just like your Social Security, by way of some explanation here, your Social Security, those of us who are drawing it, will go up about 2%, I believe it is, this year, or immediately, because of the cost of living. Do you favor the continuation of COLAs? And of course, they also apply to not only Social Security, but pensions and retirement pay of federal retirees and so forth.
We have to have cost of living adjustments. If we don't, the folks who are on seniors, on fixed income, our senior citizens, are going to lose buying power, and most senior citizens certainly are on moderate to low incomes, and the result of that is if we don't have a cost of living adjustment on a fairly regular basis, then senior citizens are going to be hurt financially, and their lifestyle is going to be impacted, and I don't think that's what we as a nation want. I don't think it's what senior citizens expected, and I think it's important that we have cost of living adjustments on a timely basis from year to year based upon the cost of living.
Obviously, we're sort of skirting an issue which is important, and that's a matter of taxes. And of course, the two parties apparently in the presidential campaign have got different conceptions. But my first question is, do you think that the federal tax system needs overhauling?
Well, I'd like everyone to know, first of all, that I'm not a tax expert. You know, I'm a farmer, so I'm not going to sit here and try to throw out a bunch of rhetoric that fools anybody into thinking that I'm some sort of an expert on the tax code. I have always believed that the important thing about taxes is that they be fair. And I think that's what a congressman's responsibility or a state legislator's responsibility is. When you're impacting or deciding upon taxes, it is that they be fair. Now, whether the tax code needs major overhaul or not, I do not know. I believe, first of all, that taxes have to be fair, and that we need to do everything we can to make them simple. And that is two requirements that I would have as far as the tax code is concerned. And I certainly think then on the other side is the responsibility of anyone in government to do everything they can to make sure that the tax dollars are spent wisely and efficiently and that they're not wasted.
Would you favor a flat tax?
I do not know enough about the issue to say that I favor it or do not favor it. What I favor is fairness. Now, if the flat tax accomplishes those two things, then I would look very seriously at it. You know, we have gone through a period of time over these last 50 years when the taxes that corporations pay have gone from 38% of the total taxable income in the country down to 11%. And so, you know, in many cases, corporations are greatly reduced in terms of taxes that they pay. The issue of A flat tax, of course, has been under great discussion. Based on everything that I have seen, I have serious questions about whether it is fair or not. And once that was settled in my mind, then I would be willing to look at it in terms of it being an appropriate way to raise the revenues that are necessary to operate the government in the United States of America.
Senator Dole, of course, is proposing a 15% cut. I gather he means by it across the board. I'm not sure of that. But do you favor that much cut in taxes?
If we can cut taxes to that extent and meet the requirements of programs like Medicare and so forth, then the answer to that is yes. If there's one thing I've learned in this year of campaigning throughout the 2nd Congressional District, it is that people are sick, tired, and fed up of paying more taxes. Now the issue becomes, if it's so easy to cut taxes by 15%, then why hasn't it been done already? And of course the answer to that is that it can't be done without cutting important programs in major ways. And so I think that is the reason that everyone is concerned about the proposal that Senator Dole has put forward. I say everyone, not everyone, but many folks are. And it's the reason it hadn't caught hold is quite simply people question whether it is a reasonable proposal that would be fair to the taxpayers in this country and would do what the senator is proposing that it will do. My guess is, based on what I have seen, is that the senator's proposal, if it were to become law, would result in a huge increase in the deficit and would put us further and further from having the budget balanced. My belief is that we should balance the federal budget. We should do it as soon as possible, and once that budget is balanced, then to the extent that we possibly can, we should give across-the-board tax cuts that are fair and in some way enhance the quality of life of every American. And that's what I favor, and that's what I would be working for as a United States Congressman.
I gather from a remark that you've already made, but just to be sure that I understand you, you don't think that the supply side economic theory would make up the deficiency created by the reduction in the tax?
Well, it seems to me, based on what happened all through the 80s, that anyone who cares about this country would question whether that would work or not. Because we did have tax cuts, but the result was a huge explosion in the deficit, and that is an issue that we've been trying to address as a nation now for several years. I believe we must address it. We can address it through balancing the federal budget, and that is the reason that I support the idea that we balance the federal budget and not take the position that we are a Me Too kind of generation, that we want what we want now and we're not concerned about future generations. So I just simply think that we have to, as a nation, come to grips with this notion and idea of balance the budget, that we need to do it, and then we need to give tax cuts with the revenues that are left in every way that makes sense and is fair and responsible.
We all realize that there is both a crime problem and a drug problem in this country. Do you have a solution for the drug problem?
Well, the way to solve the drug problem obviously begins in the home. Now that doesn't mean that every child reared by two loving, caring parents is not going to at some point have a problem with drugs. But that's a good way to start the program. The second way that you do it is to educate youngsters and invest tax dollars in seeing that youngsters are educated throughout their school years to the horrible effects of drugs and the terrible consequences that come from the use of drugs by all people in our society. And then the additional way that you do it, once you get beyond that point, is that you invest resources in policemen, and you invest whatever it takes in terms of jails to put those people who are selling these drugs and promoting the sale of these drugs behind bars, and in whatever way we can to get them off the street. And then, as a nation, invest additional resources in a very serious and complete way to keep these drugs out of this country in every way that we possibly can. Now, those are just some general thoughts that I have on it, and the general way that my approach would be as a United States Congressman in supporting various ways of dealing with this drug and crime problem. My guess is that a lot of the crime problem is caused by drugs. And so if we can somehow come to grips as a nation and as a people with the drug problem in a very serious way and a very complete way, then I think that we will see the crime problem addressed as a result of what we would do in fighting the drug problem.
Do you think that more jails without employment opportunities for younger people, and particularly Afro-Americans, is the solution?
Well, there's one thing about it. When people commit crimes, we've got to have somewhere to put them. And so to that extent, we have to have the resources, that being the jails, to take care of those folks who break the law. Now, I've always been a great believer in education. And I've already talked about the importance of educating youngsters to the harmful effect of drugs. We as a nation, and certainly as a state here in Kentucky, have a responsibility, and I believe we have committed resources to improve educational opportunity in Kentucky. We have to continue as best we can to channel youngsters who don't have the right home background, who may not be the type of individuals who could make it at the college level, into various vocational and technical schools to give them the skills that are necessary to hold a good job. And I think that state government and or the federal government have a responsibility in those ways so that everyone can be encouraged to achieve whatever their level of achievement may be, so that they can have access to the best opportunity they possibly can.
Would you favor a program similar to the old CCC program that was developed during the Depression?
Well, I am not prepared to say that I would support that at this point. First of all, that program came about as a result of a very high unemployment rate, a very high poverty level that was brought about by a number of conditions in these United States. And so it seems to me, given the situation that our economy is in at this point, that our employment level is in at this point, that being that we have an unemployment rate in this country of around 5%, that we're not in any sort of situation that would require that sort of level of commitment of resources on the part of the federal government. Now, I think everyone needs to understand that given welfare reform as it has occurred, had been passed by the United States Congress, that we're not going to have huge savings as a result of that legislation. What is hoped to be accomplished by that, and I certainly support that, is that we will in some way change the work ethic of those who are a part of our welfare system, and that somehow as a result of these changes in the welfare laws we can put these people to work, or they can gain access to a job and support themselves. So to that extent, I think that is the important thing, and that we need to understand as a part of welfare reform. And those youngsters and young adults or even older folks who do not have the job opportunities, that we're going to have to invest as a nation in technical and vocational training for those folks so they can get a job and keep a job and do a job, and so that we may have to invest in both child care for some of these folks. Transportation could be a part of it as well. But the important thing is that we get people to working and get them off the welfare roll and change the attitudes that many people have about work in this country.
Do you think that can be accomplished by the grant system that is, well, it's already partial law, at any rate, applying to a large part of it? Do you think it can be accomplished by grants rather than federal programs?
Well,
grants to the states.
My guess is that it probably can. I think to the extent that it's at all possible that the states need to have the responsibility for operating the welfare system. I think that is the better option, and let the states have the flexibility to make the decisions about who should get the money, how the money should be spent, and what are the best use of those resources. I think that is the better option. And the states will then more quickly know what kind of focus needs to be put as far as training is concerned for the people that are coming off the welfare rolls.
And I presume you base a part of that on your experience in state government. You think that the state government is capable of handling it?
Well, I certainly do. I absolutely believe the state government is capable of handling it and can make the decisions better than the federal government can as far as welfare is concerned.
The only question I would have there, why was it that the Nixon grants weren't successful?
Well, I'm not familiar enough with that issue to respond to your question. I don't know why they weren't successful.
They did get state grants. There was grants to states and to cities and to even regional governmental units, as I recall. And somehow or other, all of a sudden they stopped.
That you're not talking about the revenue sharing?
Well, no, I'm talking about they had some grants in the Nixon administration to the cities, and the states got some of those grants too for various projects, as I understood it.
I see. I'm not really familiar with that enough to argue the issue with you.
Well, I'm not arguing it one way or another.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering about it. I think that, and I'm hearing more and more complaints about the interstate road system and that it is deteriorating. What is your opinion about that? And if elected, what would you advocate about that?
Well, it seems to me, and I've spent a lot of time on the interstate road systems in Kentucky, particularly on Interstate 65, because it is the interstate road that goes through the 2nd Congressional District. And it seems to me that that road is in pretty good shape, although it carries a huge volume of traffic. And, you know, obviously the federal government has a responsibility there. I am not aware of the fact, or do not have any intimate knowledge that we're falling way short as far as revenues are concerned to meet the job of the upkeep on our interstate roads. Of course, the United States Congress a few months ago did cut back on the federal tax on gasoline. I think it was 3 or 4 cents, I'm not sure which, and that does affect the resources to the road system, and it may be that small amount over the long haul could make a huge difference. Roads are so important and critical to the economy of these United States of America. We have, as a nation, a major investment in those roads, and we're going to have to maintain those roads in a way so that commerce can flow freely in the United States, and so that people can move about freely, else our economy would be hurt very quickly and very seriously. So we have to maintain that investment in that road system.
Well, I hear complaints not nearly as much about maintenance of the federal system as the adequacy of it, the need for more and no funds to, it's taken all the funds to maintain them. And would you be favorable or unfavorable to expanding the system?
Well, I certainly support the idea that we need to invest in roads in this country. I always have, because they're so critical to the economy. Now, I cannot sit here and say to you that we need more revenue for roads in this country. I just am not that familiar in any detail with the dollars in terms of shortfall in meeting the needs for improving roads or even building new roads. But obviously we have to continue to invest in the road system and maintain that road system in a way that serves the needs of this country, and I support that idea. And to the extent that we have to have improvements in these roads, then I would be a part of seeing that we're able to finance road improvements that are important and critical to the United States of America.
If you are elected, what committee assignments would you prefer?
I have kind of kept an open mind on that subject, really just to kind of see what evolved after the election and what the possibilities were. Obviously, I have a very deep interest in agriculture. That's what I've been about as a person, and because of the tobacco issue, have a special interest in agriculture, I think, in that committee. Fort Knox is very important here, and of course there are a number of committees and subcommittees as it relates to the military that I would want to look at because of its importance. There are other committees that I think also can have a big impact on agriculture and on Fort Knox that really do not have names that lend themselves to that. One, of course, is Appropriations and Revenue Committee, and of course through that committee comes all appropriations and all expenditures of monies in the United States. And so that is an area that I, if given the opportunity, would have to look seriously at, the possibility of serving on that committee. It affects agriculture. Another committee is the Ways and Means Committee, because that committee is deeply involved in issues of both taxes and trade. And both of those can have a huge impact certainly upon agriculture and the entire economy of this area. And so I would be looking at those too as possibilities. I really, there are a number of possibilities. I don't want to get locked in and totally blocked in, because you just never know how the elections might go in the House of Representatives, whether you'd be in a majority or minority, who the majority leader might be, and so forth. And but my goal would be to try to have committee assignments that to the extent possible would reflect what is important to the people of the 2nd Congressional District, and would ensure that I could provide the kind of service and support to those entities and those economic forces that are important and critical to the 2nd Congressional District.
What positions do you have on foreign trade? Are you in agreement with the Foreign Trade Acts that we have now, or do you think they need revising or curtailing, or what position is your position on foreign trade?
Well, given what I know and what I have observed of late, and given the fact that in the 2nd Congressional District several hundred jobs have been lost recently, more than likely as a result of the NAFTA trade agreement. You know, obviously if you had it to do over again, I think probably most folks in Kentucky or Kentucky congressmen would not support that, because very likely has had a detrimental effect on Kentucky. Now the GATT agreement, on the other hand, probably has had a huge positive impact on Kentucky agriculture, and particularly on tobacco. And the result of that is that we're selling a very large percentage of Kentucky-grown tobacco overseas at this point, and a lot of that's a result of the GATT agreement. So really a combination of, NAFTA probably has had a detrimental effect on the economy in this state, whereas GATT, in my opinion, has probably had a very positive impact on it. And I think the issue of fairness has to be considered in any trade agreement, not only just in terms of just is it fair in terms of the impact that it has on workers and so forth, but we have to make sure that those companies that are our competitors, when we open up the doors throughout the world, that they're meeting the same requirements as we are, as our American companies are, and I'm talking about issues as far as worker safety and that sort of thing. So it seems to me at this point that NAFTA probably has not had a positive impact, whereas GATT probably has. It would be easy for me to say here, and well, I think we ought to get rid of NAFTA. I'd like an opportunity to reserve judgment on that until I really have an opportunity to study it in a more careful way and really weigh the positive and negatives.
Do you approve of the President's trade policy with China?
Well, I am pleased that we have a trade policy in that we are making headway and inroads as far as sale of American products into China. I think the important thing there, as we've already discussed, is that it be fair and that we not get in a situation as far as a trade policy with China where we're not able to sell our products in a very free way in their country. And the other side of the coin is that we have opened our doors to them, and they are presenting unfair competition to companies in the United States of America, and resulting in workers in the United States not being able to have good jobs or to maintain the standard of living in order to be competitive.
What about the argument that we shouldn't be trading with them until they liberalize their civil rights program?
Well, I certainly think you can argue that issue, and I have no quarrel with anyone who wants to argue the issue on that side. China is such a major force in the world, not only just in terms of its economy, but in terms of the numbers of people that it has, in terms of militarily, and I think it's important that we keep the heat on them as far as human rights violations and the way they conduct themselves in human affairs and human rights, that we keep the heat on them. But I also believe that we need to maintain a relationship with them. I think it's important that we do, and that we recognize their existence in the world and have a trade agreement and trade with them that is fair to both sides.
We are now hearing much debate and many arguments about immigrants. And I note that we are having more and more immigrant laborers in Kentucky, not only on farms doing farm work, but for instance, we've had quite a few here in a chicken factory. What's your position about that?
I think that illegal immigrants should be sent home on the quickest and nearest bus available or plane. And I think because of the trade agreements that we have that are in force all across the world, that the countries from whence these illegal immigrants came should have to pay their way back. And I think that should impact upon those trade agreements if they aren't willing to do that. As far as our borders that we are aware of in the United States, I have no problem with what presidential candidate Bob Dole has talked about, in some way using the United States military to try to secure the borders and keep out illegal immigrants. I don't know, I'd like to reserve judgment on that to fully understand what the cost might be, but there is a cost if we don't. So I just simply think that we have to protect our borders against these illegal immigrants and stop them there and send them back if they're found here. As far as legal immigrants, you know, that's what we are as a nation. We are a nation of immigrants, and you know, I think that we need to remember that and have policies that recognize that we are a nation of immigrants, and appreciate and respect that in our laws as far as it relates to immigration.
I'm going to ask you some questions about something that I don't hear much about insofar as this campaign is concerned, and I'm talking about the national campaign, which includes local. But as you undoubtedly know, there were 5 or 6 different constitutional amendments proposed in the last Congress. In order to pass them, it takes 2/3 majority in each house, and then after they pass Congress, they have to be ratified, as you know, by 3/4 of the states. So I think that there are important issues in these various proposed constitutional amendments. Of course, they died with this past session of Congress, but I have no doubt, and I don't believe you do either, that they won't be reintroduced in the next session. And one of them, of course, is the balanced budget amendment. I would gather from what you've already said you would probably favor that.
I do. In both 1982 and in 1984, as a state senator and as majority leader of the state Senate, I supported, as a state senator, asking the United States Congress to put forth a balanced budget amendment to the United States Constitution. And so, as a United States Congressman, I would support that as a constitutional amendment. I know that a person can argue both sides of it and take the position that it is not necessary to have the amendment, that all Congress has to do is do it. But, you know, the Congress is made up of a group of elected people and politicians, and they like to do everything they can for the folks back home. And many times, if you spend too much money on those kind of items, then you're not able to balance the federal budget. And so my guess is that if the states can operate under balanced budget amendments, which they do, and certainly we do in the state of Kentucky, then the federal government should too. I think you obviously have to put some exemptions in there, some exclusions for some sort of national or international crisis, such as wars and that sort of thing. But beyond that, I think it's appropriate to do it. I think we should do it, and I would support a balanced budget amendment that would do it.
If elected, would you also support the continuation of the act passed by this past Congress, giving the President an item veto?
Yes, I would. I've always supported that, and I think that would do a lot to help in balancing the federal budget anyway, in that if the President does the job that a President's supposed to do, then they would use that line item veto to stop some of those pork barrel projects that we all have become too familiar with over the years, and so I do support that.
What about the proposed amendments to limit terms in Congress?
I'm opposed to that and would vote against it. I believe we already have term limits in this nation, in that as it deals with the House of Representatives, every 2 years the voters have a choice. They can re-elect their congressman or they can throw the person out. And I think that is as good as you can hope to do as far as term limits are concerned.
What about an amendment which is commonly called the prayer amendment, allowing prayer in schools?
I have never been one that believes in government-sponsored prayer. I believe in voluntary prayer, and youngsters have that opportunity as we speak today in schools. And I do not believe that we need a constitutional amendment that would require government-sponsored prayer.
What about the proposed amendment outlawing abortions?
I would support a constitutional amendment that would outlaw abortions and would prohibit abortions.
Would the amendment that you would support make it a federal offense like the Prohibition Amendment was, and it would have to be enforced by the federal government, or would you favor an amendment leaving it to the states to determine?
Well, Mr. Barrickman, I have not really thought of that in that great detail. It seems to me that the states would be the better way to deal with that issue. As I say, I have not really thought of it to that end, but just based on your question and based on my limited knowledge as to which would be the more appropriate, it would seem to me that the states would be the better place to do that.
Well, you see, and I have not, I don't know what the proposed amendment really mandated in this regard. But of course what they're talking about is changing the ruling of the Supreme Court, which said that a woman had a right to an abortion. And you could have an amendment that would eliminate that as far as the Supreme Court's concerned, but leave it to the states to determine whether that state would allow it or wouldn't allow it, or whether you could have the federal government that would ban it federal-wise, just like the Prohibition Amendment.
No, no. Then if that, given your explanation on that, then if we're going to have a federal constitutional amendment on the issue, then it would, as far as I'm concerned, what I would be supporting would be that it be banned nationwide. That's what I would be supporting.
And be enforceable nationwide.
That's right. That's right.
I don't know exactly what the amendment proposes.
Right, and I don't either. And I don't either, but it would seem to me that if you're going to have that sort of amendment, it needs to be nationwide, else it would have very little effect.
What about the flag amendment?
I support the flag amendment, that as far as making it a criminal offense to desecrate the American flag.
And then there's a widely touted amendment now, crime victims amendment. And I don't know exactly what that would entail.
Well, I don't either, and I certainly, I'm not out here looking to amend the federal Constitution to deal with each and every problem that some group of folks might have, and you know, I would have to reserve judgment on that sort of thing. That's the first I've heard of it, and I would not want to speculate until I knew more about what it in fact was.
Well, one of them, I think, was introduced in the last Congress also. And, I've been seeing some articles in legal journals about that proposed amendment. Is one reason I knew that it was out there. Why do you think you should represent the 2nd District rather than Mr. Lewis?
I think that Mr. Lewis has demonstrated during his 2 years that he is not a leader, that he's a follower, and that other folks from other places are controlling what he does and basically telling him how to vote in the United States Congress. And I don't believe that he's doing the job for the people of the 2nd Congressional District. If I did believe that, then I wouldn't be in this race. I think that time and again in my lifetime that I have demonstrated in many and varied ways that I can step up, that I can make solid decisions, that I can provide leadership, that I can bring folks together to solve problems. And I believe I've done that both as a school board member, when I led the effort to save the rural schools in Breckinridge County, and those very schools stand today as a monument to what people can accomplish when they come together for the good of all. And certainly in the state senate, time and time and time again, had the responsibility to solve very serious and complex problems and to try to do them in the fair and compassionate way so that all Kentuckians would benefit from the decisions that were made. And also as president of the Burley Tobacco Growers Co-op, when we were facing a very serious situation just 2 years ago, it looked like we were going to take a 40% cut. And as president of the Burley Co-op, I had the responsibility of working with the folks in the Carolinas, the flu-cured area, in hiring the lawyers, putting together the negotiating team, and going off to Washington and bringing all those folks together and bringing a real focus to that effort so that we could sell that $750 million worth of tobacco. And the result was that we were successful, and we didn't have to take that cut. And in fact, since then, have had nearly a 20% increase. So I think he and I are just quite different in lots of ways. You know, my wife and I are very happy on the farm right there in Harnett. And I wouldn't be at all interested in making this race and going off to Washington and having a bunch of muckety-mucks and higher-ups in leadership positions in the United States Congress tell me what was good for the people of the 2nd Congressional District. The people are the ones that I'm looking to for support, and the people are the ones in the 2nd District are the ones that I'm going to be about in the United States Congress. I'm going to try to reflect what we're about as individuals and as families and communities, and work with those communities to bring about good and positive change for the 2nd Congressional District. And that's what I will do as a United States Congressman. I look forward to the opportunity of doing it, and I think that the service that I could render as a congressman will reflect in a very positive way on the 2nd Congressional District and the good that we could accomplish in working together.
Perhaps we have, and we haven't got but a minute or two left, but perhaps we have neglected one of your expertise, or what should be your expertise field, and that is farm programs. And of course this last Congress changed the farm program quite extensively, did they not? I mean, as far as I could tell, there was quite extensive changes made. Is that correct?
Mr. Barrickman, you are exactly right. And I want everyone to understand that if I would have been there in the United States Congress, in the end, I would have voted for that legislation. At the same time, I want everyone to understand that if I had been in the United States Congressman, in the United States Congress as our congressman, I would have tried desperately to have moved in a different direction than what we find in the new farm program. I believe very strongly in the idea of a safety net for farmers. And of course this new farm program does away with that safety net, and sure, I'm like every other farmer. I don't think any of us should look a gift horse in the mouth. We should take it. We don't have to do anything for it. But the bottom line is our congressman supported the idea of just totally throwing away any and all safety nets in this program. And one other problem that everyone needs to understand is that we have done away with the idea of acreage and supply controls on corn, wheat, and soybeans in this country now. Tobacco and peanuts, the only two left out there. And one of the more respected publications just in the last 30 days has made note of that fact, that tobacco is kind of left standing alone now, and because of this new farm program. And the result very well may be that they're going to come after tobacco next because we're now standing alone. So I just raise that as an issue for everyone to think about, and I don't think the folks that were up there promoting this farm program recognized that they were separating tobacco.
Mr. Wright, I thank you very much for being here and answering my questions. You didn't duck any of them. I appreciate that fact, and good luck to you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Barrickman, and you're right. It's one of the more probing interviews that I've had during this entire campaign, and I appreciate and respect that. I try real hard to answer the questions, and sometimes it's tough, but I do try to do that, and I respect the toughness of your questions, and I appreciate the interview and the opportunity to be here visiting with you, and hopefully our viewers will learn something about me and what I'm about as a person and so forth.
Thank you.
Thank you.